Just right on it. There we go. All right, so Charlie, what's new and exciting for your financial?
Just a few things, just kind of a heads up for next week. We have capital on the budget list. So we've already talked to Public Works about a few things. I had 3 meetings, I think, this week with Public Works and Finance and ourselves. So I can handle, so you all have the information for that. We also have TIF discussion, which, Tammy, I heard that TIFs are your expertise, so actually I might try and grab you at some point next week to get an update on that. And Matt, thank you for getting some of the documentation for the Monday council meeting, which is just like the annual report. That's pretty standard, but I think the conversation at budget, we can maybe go into a little more detail on the TIFs.
Sure.
And another thing I mentioned last week, it's a small thing, but we have a snow plow that had struck a individual's car in January that was almost brand new. It was like a month old, their car. There's no injuries. It's gone through insurance, but their insurance holder, our insurance holder, had kind of exhausted their amount of days for a rental car, due to some parts back orders issues. The car is still in the shop, not expected to be ready until May. So we talked about, it's not an obligation of the city to continue rental, but we felt it was due diligence to offer another month of rental, which would be about $2,100. And Sue, our tax collector, who has some experience in insurance, actually has kind of handled this. There was a request to, fund the full car at the city, and we've declined that request. We're forwarding any future inquiries relative to that should go to the insurer. But we did feel like it was the right thing to do to offer another month of rental. But beyond that, it's a matter for the insurance companies. So last thing is, I know at the previous council meeting, there was discussion on, after the school, discussion on, voting on the budget on Monday, delaying the budget if needed to be for the election. Myself, Tony, and Matt had a discussion on that to sort of game that out if council wanted to entertain that idea of delaying the election. It'd probably be about $2,500 would be the expense to run the machines if we were to hold that, push back an election to hold another one. But you're only gaining about 2 weeks on that because of the state laws regarding, it's not until July 1st that we need to do a new budget, but because of state laws on a 45-day availability of ballots, we actually have to backtrack from July 1st, 45 days, and then we have to backtrack a little more so we can get our request for the printing of the ballot in. So if we were to say we'd like to delay this, you only have about 2 more weeks past Monday to make a new decision on the school budget. So that's we're not buying 2 months to make a decision when we have much more detail on things. We're only buying 2 weeks under current law. There is the other option. I believe, it's sort of, a previous council has decided to sort of end this policy of the school budget not being linked to the other budget, so that everything can be considered together. But there is a sort of a referendum vote. Mm-hmm. For 3 years. It's not legally binding, is what I'm told, and the council could to decide. We'd probably want to talk to Mr. Hamer if we wanted to go that route, but it was really more of a, what do you think about this? And so it's not actually legally binding. The council could decide that we're just no longer going to follow that policy out of hand, even though there was a referendum vote. I'd have to do more look into that, but which goes to say, or there might be an option if we wanted to delay the fiscal year piece and operating under a continuing resolution of some sort. Again, those are other options I could consider, and I'll probably have to talk to Mr. Hamer and others just so on Monday, as council's going into this, you have all the facts. So,
Okay.
Last piece, I know.
Could I just ask a question about that? Could we get some data of, didn't that go out to election and the citizens wanted it?
Yeah, that was my
Correct.
concern.
They wanted to hold it for 3 years, yeah.
Right. Could we get some data on how many people voted and how many we're trying to satisfy or dissatisfy in that decision process?
Yeah, I'll pull the votes on that. Offhand, I think it was it was not a big election. I think it was like the 300.
Yeah, that's what I recall, but I'd like to get some data on that, if that's gonna come before the council or possible come before the council, I would think that we should measure who wanted that and who didn't. In other words, in terms of numbers, not in terms of, you know,
Yeah.
anything other than numbers.
Yeah, I'll definitely get that for you, and I think the total timeline, if you were to kind of abide by the will of that referendum, is even next year, this would be a similar process, and we kind of go forward. However, maybe we pull all of budget season up a lot further next year, so that, you know, everybody can have a whole picture view, but again, then you're budgeting so far ahead of the fiscal season ending that, you know, your budgeted to actuals.
Right, and that's what happens with the school every year too, because they start so early in the year, so they can make the timelines for, I think it was, we used to see them in May, right, Gary? It was like middle of May, and then we vote on it in June, but maybe that was before the election. It must have been before the election stuff, so.
The other piece of that might be to get the superintendent's view of that. If the council, if that does come before the council, we could get their view.
Okay. The view on,
If I may,
Yeah.
you're talking, and because you're talking to them, you're not talking to us.
Yeah.
So it's hard to hear.
sorry.
Are you talking about having the election for the school budget in July?
We wouldn't be able
That's
to.
what I read.
June 30th, I think, is technically the last time that we'd be able to have the election in order to meet the fiscal year.
So if you have it in July, what I'm trying to do, make sure you put a continuing resolution
Yep.
on the June
Yeah, we have to try.
council meeting with some limits, so they don't go out and buy all the expensive stuff
Right.
in July and say, so just.
Yep.
you know,
Absolutely. And just to, the superintendent's view, on the budget itself being
No.
linked, or?
No, the election part.
The election part, if it was.
Because if it's gonna come before the council, my guess is a lot of the people that wanted it was within the school department, because a lot of people that vote on that is within the school department. So if we could get her weight on that, if we're gonna change the will of 300 voters,
Yeah.
just like to hear about that, if you will.
Okay, so the-
Because I've been a fan from the beginning, if you're gonna put anything out to vote, put it all out to vote or none of it out to vote. This half of it going out to vote is against my grain, but that doesn't make it right or wrong. That
Yep.
just means that I don't see any value, but 300 people saw value in it. So, you know, I'd like to hear from the superintendent, if it's gonna come before the council to nix the vote.
Yeah, and I think that in some ways, I don't know if it's necessarily before the council, it's just, that's an action option in the council, and I probably need to do a little more research into if, you know, what steps would be there. But I'll definitely get the
Yeah,
superintendent's
her
view.
thoughts on that, you know, would be, I think, important.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a little more research on just kind of what was the language in the previous referendum piece, you know, and the other pieces on that. And then obviously the big thing for myself in finance has been, you know, budget, trying to get that sort of top sheet, which outlines, you know, so you can make the best decision possible on Monday with the data we have, what we know, what we don't know, you know, what the current revenues are in and expectations for next year and how that matches up with school, with the full departmental pieces. It's kind of part of this issue with the school and us is we're still going through, you know, police is going to be in 2 weeks. So we have initial budgets from all these areas, but they're not final. So, you know, but this will be our best guess so you guys can decide if you have what you need to move on the school piece. But that's kind of where we're at.
I would like, and I've said this before, but if we could get the pieces of the budget prior to the meeting, because it's very challenging for us to kind of be listening and going through, you know, it's better to, and to have your questions already.
Yeah, we have 100% to police. In 2 weeks, we had a long discussion with police yesterday. Their budgets are, you know, I think finalized and ready to be viewed ahead of time by council. So we're going to distribute that budget for the next week's police budget. Then capital and for this coming week, maybe we talk about this after that on kind of where we're at with what's going to be in the packets, and then hopefully on Monday maybe we can send those ahead of time.
That'd be great.
So you get in there. But definitely the police, Public Works and myself have talked about capital. The TIF one might be a little more But I think we probably, I don't know, but do you want to weigh in, Ann, on?
I just had a question. I understand the housing, the Oriole Way TIFs and Leonard Lake. But the journal entry that theoretically should have been made for, I think it's Beckwith. I had a meeting with Larry this week about what's this other piece, the really big piece, because has not been in.
You mean the
book.
economic development TIF?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I
Yep.
think it's Beckwith is what it's
Beckwith
called.
Hill.
Okay.
Yeah, because the, up there is called Beckwith, and that's what we need.
Right, so I kept wondering, I'm like asking Matt, where did this money come from? He's like, it's in the TIF. But that transfer where the money comes in and then it should go into that TIF, like transfer out, hasn't been made for a couple of years, so I didn't know what it was. And no one could tell me. So I now have the raw data for that, so I would love to hear about it from you, because I know that you understand. I understand the other three, but that one,
Yeah.
there's like your old notebooks, and that's it.
I don't know where all my stuff went.
I just found
I
it-
had
I found it-
binders and books
I have your
and
binder.
notes and like details on everything. So I don't know.
I have
where
your
it went.
binder, but
That's
it goes
okay.
back to like, it's, the last thing that's in there was 2012, I think.
Was Michelle calling in?
Was it 2012? The last paperwork in
Yeah.
the brown binder?
Hello.
Yeah, it might have been older than that.
Oh. I hung up.
Welcome.
Might have been older than that, I don't know.
So maybe try and look, just prior to council, maybe to kind of pick your brain on TIF,
Yeah.
if we could,
So
just.
we can just.
We
schedule
have the
some
number,
meeting.
but I would love to understand exactly what makes up that number.
Sure.
So
We
the
can do that.
number's in the revenue, that's the revenue sheet that we gave you, but I just want to understand that one. I get the other ones, but that one I don't.
It's also backwards.
Yeah.
Your revenue needs to be in your, the revenue that you take in from a TIF should be in your expenses, because you still need to collect all that money.
Right.
And the projects that are under that economic
Right.
development TIF need to be in your revenue.
Right.
Yeah, so.
So,
Hopefully that
but
makes sense.
If we
'cause
have
you
it both, if we have it in both, then it's doubling up that number.
We can, I'm, free next week, sometime
Good,
after
okay.
work, and maybe Thursday or something,
Okay.
because you guys work a little later on that day,
Great.
so.
We have that problem with the housing tip too, Leonard Lake,
No, that one's easy.
Brian Moore School, is that all set?
I have Leonard Lake and the two Oriole Ways, the workforce housing and the senior housing. Those ones are fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, we don't have any sort of history or,
Sure.
yeah, so that would be
Yeah.
great if you could explain that one. And then we'll make all those entries and move all that around where it goes. Because it pays for some salaries, I believe, and it pays for Beckwith, I'm talking about.
Yeah, it used to be 1/4% of the city managers.
Right.
All of Jana's budget, plus some of the debt and capital improvement projects, and so, yeah.
Okay.
And Matt, I know Matt's been graciously staying on to help with the budget process, so we can kind of keep some continuity and knowledge here. I don't know if you have anything else, Matt, on the budget side of things.
No, I mean, there's some Thursday to meet with Dan next week, that'll be after the TIP workshop, I don't know if that makes sense for you or not, but.
No, it doesn't make sense. All right, we'll chat afterwards, and we
Okay.
can schedule something.
Great.
We think we get it, I just need you to
Yeah,
go yes or no,
okay.
just the blessing that we
I can
understand
absolutely
it.
do that.
And that's it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so, same stuff, we're still troubleshooting, the AP function of Cassell. We still don't have, the paychecks numbers. Before I left, it was completed, and Nate, I believe, talked to them. And what we understood to be a quick migration across from both Cassell and Paychex originally and the auditor, they told Nate it could be a couple of weeks still till they push that payroll into Cassell. So we still don't have those year-to-dates for it.
So there's no payroll numbers in.
There's some that I've been able to pull out, but a lot of the things like for police and fire, they're not. it's
There's
not
your $4
really-
million,
It's not really clear.
if it's not in there, because you were saying that the budget actuals was off, like $4 million. So the payroll's
Oh.
not in there.
Yeah.
The budget
So
actuals,
The payroll
yeah.
that is in there is just super straightforward and
Yeah.
easy to figure out, but those big ones are so, they have so many accounts and so many different
Right,
debits
right.
and credits that I didn't even want to try to estimate it. So I put what I had to date before paycheck started, which isn't really helpful because that's
It's like a
September of
month and a half,
'23.
yeah.
So you're saying the departmental actuals are budgeted for next year, or that's what we're off on and is not included in these budgets?
Yeah, there hasn't, payroll's not been, the payroll from September, I believe the 8th is when we started with paychecks, through now is not in the general ledger. Because we don't have that we don't have the migration from, into the new software.
Nate, could you repeat what you said? I didn't catch what you said in conjunction with.
I don't remember what I said.
You talked to Leah, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I talked to Leah, because she's the one who's handling the migration.
From
That was
Paychex.
last week. And yeah, she made it sound like it could be around the end of this month until that migration takes place.
Did we know the dollar figure on that migration, or is that, they can't pre-estimate that, or?
I mean, the thing is we could probably get a lump sum
We
from
could probably get a lump
paychecks.
sum.
The problem is distributing it to the right categories is gonna be the hard part. So like I said, the departments like police and fire, like that stuff's gonna be hard to actually put in the right columns, but now as far as getting a total dollar amount,
Just the total municipal dollar
Yeah.
amount?
We got a report for them, which is how we were able to do some of the payroll. But it wasn't, remember the two-page
Mhm.
report that we
Yeah.
got? It just didn't give us totals. It gave us a lot of subtotals, and it gave us categories that don't match up with what we know as the chart of accounts for payroll previously, and that doesn't match up with the new payroll chart of accounts. So it seemed like unwise to try to make a guess as to what that would be.
Super frustrating,
It is very
considering
frustrating.
paychecks, they should have had that before it went live, it should have all been implemented before then, I mean, I think it's
We
across
just-
the board, software companies are just not what they used to be,
No.
so.
I was saying,
And the chart
you've
of
reached out
accounts
multiple
wasn't done.
times.
Yeah,
And we're just not.
I've been like a mosquito with that woman, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Won't even talk to me. I'm like, can you just give me give me a guess? Just throw something out there. So, and it will take not only them being prepared, but then also Cassell and Nate would have to oversee that. Nate, IT Nate, so.
Old Nate,
Old
Yeah,
Nate, OG
old
your new
Nate.
Nate and
Yeah,
old
yeah,
Nate,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But once it happens, boom, we have a ton of information at that point about actuals. So where we've put them in, we feel good about what we have, but PD, fire, public works, probably
Yeah.
more of a guess there. A lot more of a guess.
Water and wastewater, have they been posted?
Yes, I have his numbers in that came off that report. There's not as many accounts, but again, it's me just looking and pulling it down, and I'll show you the report, actually. We have the
Okay.
report. And you can see what we're talking about, because it's really confusing. There's so many reports in the old chart of accounts, and the new chart of accounts pulls them down into fewer accounts. So where that all will shake out, we're not exactly sure.
Okay.
So in terms of the actuals for '23, or '24, I should say, that's the side, but the projected for '25, we are including that in the departmentals, right, the top lines, or?
Yeah, for
Okay.
for the actual budget requests, yeah, that's separate.
That's all in there. So
Yeah,
we're
it's
still,
just that
we're still playing
year-to-date.
cleanup on the previous, usually you like to have that done before you project your next year's, but we're just taking what, as true,
Right.
what they say.
Yeah.
Just that software integration fell in a weird time that didn't make that possible to do. But we feel good about our revenue numbers year-to-date, and we feel good about revenue for next year. Because we went through it line by line to make sure, looking back 2 or 3 years, to make sure that they were reasonable and that they were in line. The only one that jumped dramatically, I don't know if you noticed, was the interest from the bank, because money markets have gone up so much. And we literally went up 4 or 5 times, which is good.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that.
I know,
that
I'm
was
like,
good.
Tammy's gonna be like, is this
I was
real?
like, oh, those are like early 2000
And
numbers.
that's-
Yeah.
And that's just through the end of March.
I don't think so. We spend the money too quick for arbitrage. So, and only if you borrowed the money, so that's the only issue.
The queen over there doesn't believe in tapping the can, so. you've got
Yeah, we
no
don't have
money-
any issues.
You got no money to spend. so.
That's right. Should be good to go.
Oh, I have a question about the tan. So we're doing another tan, I'm assuming this year. So do you want to, just because interest rates are so volatile, I thought about, since we try not to take down from it, we haven't taken from the tan this year other than the required 50,000. Do you want to do a bigger tan or do you want to keep it the way it right now?
If we
it's-
haven't used any this year,
We
we
haven't
don't need
used
to
any.
go get a tan because, I mean, that's more money we have to pay for Jim Safian for the bond council. And then if it comes to it, I mean, I think we can probably turn it around pretty quickly.
Okay, so you want to just let it, because I have to pay off this one, the one that we have now.
Do you have like a cash
It's like
flow
50
estimate?
Yeah, it's 51,000.
At the end of the year, though?
All the
Like,
way
what-
through, you want it through December?
No, through June
Yeah.
30th, like
Fi-
to see where we're gonna end up.
We're gonna end up owing 51,600.
No, what our cash balance is
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
be at the,
Yeah.
by July 30th,
I
June
think-
30th, because also the school has their summer payroll, and there's like big chunks of money coming out at the, like, July 1st
Yeah.
timeframe, so just wanna make sure we have enough money to cover those as well.
Okay, we should be really, as long as the audit's done at the end of this month, we kind of have a plan to just drive through cash recs for 24 once we have those numbers.
Okay.
Could we also figure out what it cost the city for the tan for this year?
51, it was like $1,200.
Yeah, but some of that was principal, right?
We didn't take down, all we took down, we have a required takedown of 50,000 when we get it. That's
Right.
it.
Okay, but, so that's principal.
Correct.
Right.
So what I'm asking is, what did it, I mean, if you take 50,000 down, what does it cost you to take the 50,000 down for the year? Because I would think some protection might be in line somewhere along the way.
Right, and that,
So the interest that's due at the end of June, if we close out that tan, is 1,680 something. I just got that.
$1,600.
Yeah.
$1,700.
$1,700.
plus the
Okay.
money that we had to pay for Jim Safian, which was another probably $5,000 to $7,000 for tan stuff, yeah, so.
Okay, so you're,
We're getting up
you're
there.
pushing $7,000.
That's why I thought if we did just a bigger tan, it's the same amount for Jim. And.
You have to prove that you need it, though. You have to do that cash analysis,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I
that's
wondered
what
if
kind
not
of.
using it was gonna penalize us, and it sounds like it does.
Yeah, yeah.
So we just can't keep that as a safety mechanism.
And I think you can turn it around pretty quickly, too, like,
If we end up.
you know, and say, hey, we're getting short on cash, what, you know.
The
Hold
first
some
is,
billing, you know, hold some bills or, to be
Write a
paid.
check today. You can write a check today, draw it down, show them you need it. Put it back in next month.
Buy that wastewater facility. Or
That's
the,
You gotta pay it back in like 2
That's
months,
what I do with the equity.
10 weeks.
Draw it down, pay it off. Shows you need it.
What's the interest rate?
on this one, it's 5.5, or 5 and some change. But I'm just worried because the interest rates are volatile, and they're all kind of not, I don't see them going down.
As part of your bid packet, though, you could actually tell them they have to hold it for until July 15th or something like that,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I
they
think
have
the
to honor
first will
it.
play ball. I'm just looking at fiscal year '25, if we want to do that just in case we do need it, and we don't want to go to market when the interest rates are really high. It's just a hedge.
And to clarify, the bond bank is $5,000, round number.
The bond bank?
Yeah, the cost of,
Oh,
Bond
the
council.
bond council.
yeah.
Yep, it's, yeah, probably about
And
5.
we have to go through the bid process,
That's-
I send out a request.
There's no chance it could be 10 or 15.
No, he's pretty,
No.
5
Yeah,
is.
yeah, 5 to 7, I think it's all according, like, how much work, but tans are so standardized that, you know, and we've been doing it for so long, and he has probably all the files already, and it's probably pretty quick turnaround time.
Yeah, we have a
so-
boilerplate for that.
Yeah.
Didn't last year you reduce the amount of the line? Do I remember
No,
that
it was a
correctly?
million, I'm pretty sure it was $1 million.
Yeah, it was two at one time, when Josh was.
Did we
here.
just borrow 1 million?
I think we just borrowed $1 million. Let me look, it might be,
Used
actually,
to
I
be
think it's
two.
2. It is 2.
I thought it was 2.
It is 2. I just want to be sure,
I thought-
since we're going to take down another one, like right now, for example, if you look at the cash in the bank
Mhm.
right now, we still have a couple million in taxes that we've not collected, but the school's only at 8.3 in their draw from us right now. So potentially, we still have a lot more that we need to give to them for fiscal year '24, if they take their full draw from the city.
Well, maybe for a safety net, then we should just do it then.
I thought I remembered that there was a $2 million
You're right.
one, and then it went down to 1, back when Josh was here. But
No,
maybe-
Right,
Josh
and then
drew
it-
down $1 million that we didn't know about, or that
Oh, right.
That's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
nobody
Right, I
knew
forgot
that he
about
drew
that,
it down and
yeah.
we had to pay it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Tammy, you're the experienced one here, but boy, I would, for $7,000, I would hate to get caught short and go scrambling.
True. All right,
But
yeah, let's do it.
What do you want the new tan?
It's your call, don't, look,
No,
I'm
no, hey.
inexperienced, but gee, I'd hate to go digging hard in a scramble situation.
Well, that cash analysis that you do would determine the amount, because you're allowed so much, a
Yeah.
percentage over, I think it's like 10% or something like that. So you have to put in like what the budget's gonna be, what the school is gonna be,
Yeah.
and like the monthly, basically cash and expenditures, and that determines like how much that you need to borrow.
So if, assuming that we have audited financials by April, we feel like we can get the rest of the '24 piece figured out by, like, say, a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So when would we need to make that decision of how much to do for that tan? And go through that cash analysis? Like, how long is that process?
You'd probably want to come to council in June,
Okay,
so that you're ready for, if you need to draw down on in July. Because usually, July and December, usually, and January are really tough months.
Yeah.
Because you're right in the middle of the tax cycle. And you also have some big payments coming out.
yeah. So I've got another-
In May.
Yeah, and need to go out to bid in May, so that we're ready for June, and, yeah.
Yeah, because I've got another big round of bond payments in fall.
Yeah, that's why we kind of put the tax collection dates in the middle of September, because we know October 1st, you're gonna have those payments,
Yeah.
and then that's why we have it in March too, because you have a bunch. And we usually try to, structure our debt that way, so.
Yeah. Okay, so on the whole issue with the bank and checks and people trying to pass fraudulent checks, as I told you over the last couple of months, I've been trying to figure out if there's a way to use ACH payments to be more secure in how we move money out of the general fund, out of the general checking account. So I had a meeting with a company called EFT Sure, which comes highly rated for secure payments. They do much bigger companies, large EFT transactions. And they have a 4-piece verification process right up till the last minute when you push the button, that they're verifying the routing numbers and the account codes and everything right to the last minute before we release the payment. And it would essentially cost us roughly what we would save in postage for all the mailing of those bills at 62 cents per. So over time, that works out for the year, right around 4,000.
How much is it?
What's?
The cost to the EFT Shore
It's about 4,000 or 5,000,
a year?
yeah. So it's pretty tight, it pretty tightly is offset by what we would save on postage, plus just the security of it, of knowing that we've kind of sharing that liability and that oversight
Are they automatically with, like, drawing from our bank when they pay? Does it, like, I just don't know how to reconcile.
Okay, so it would go like the way ACH payments, are on the warrant where it just shows it.
Yeah.
And then we build that register into the bank. And then we go through it now with Positive Pay right before we send it, which would be like today, we'll do that. So it would work the same way, only they would come in, they're an intermediary who would come in and verify all of that banking information. Because there's a lot of fraud, deep fake fraud that comes in at the last minute and tries to change bank account numbers.
So, but your Positive Pay that you're using should eliminate that issue.
It should.
It does. I mean,
Yeah.
I've used it and to ensure
Yeah.
that it wasn't. And how much are we paying a month for Positive Pay?
It's free.
Okay.
So it's just, but I would like to transition away from mailing checks, because we have a lot of checks that come back and have to be remailed, and we have checks that get lost. And that was how we had the first fraud with the postage check. That was the first one that happened where it was deposited to some investment account. We got the money back because it was to the post office and they gave it to some random person, but that was the first time. And that check came out of the mail.
Does it create any efficiencies within your department, do you feel,
Oh,
besides?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no more printing checks and stamping and mailing and getting checks back and restamping and remailing. So I think so. I mean, and not only that, but it puts a massive amount of security on those transactions.
Now you just need to have all of your vendors or
They set
those
up the vendors for you and verify all their banking information. They do that setup piece.
Physically call the vendor and verify it, or are they verifying it just on?
They have it through a more secured process. I mean, what I've seen, because I've been reading about this since it started of what's going on, but in deep fakes, I mean, they're getting into people's phone systems, they're stealing huge amounts of money that is taking even the most cautious vendors by surprise, because they, one letter off on an email, one number off on a phone number, and the technology just exists to be able to do that, and they're using AI to do it, which is super smart from a criminal standpoint, but it's very hard to stay ahead of it manually, especially if we go to getting rid of that whole check writing, mailing process and putting all of AP, doing all of AP that way.
So you're gonna have some vendors that are like, no, we don't do that.
We will,
So,
I mean, but a
because-
lot of according to the girls that do AP, a lot of them request it.
Okay.
I mean, we have onesie, twosie people that request their payments via ACH.
Okay. Well, you get it quicker now,
You get it
especially with the
quicker,
mail.
yeah, you get
So,
it through-
I mean, I mean, thank you for telling us about it, but I think it's a decision that, you do
Yeah,
internally.
let's talk more
so-
about it. Also, just, it does worry me that we're worried about the AI component, but then we're going to an all electronic for a lot of these things, and who's taking the liability on that?
They are, that's why I'm thinking about using that service, is that they would provide that guaranteed protection. There's-
Many companies are going in this direction.
Yeah, and it seems like a modernization too, and it could maybe just be quicker, and we'll know what our accounts are, as opposed to, hey,
Well,
we've
that's
got this
for
many
sure.
checks out, like, how much are those checks haven't been cashed, what kind of,
So they still have to enter the invoice, and
Yeah, it still
it's basically
goes.
just how
How
you
you print
record
the
it
check.
as when you're
Yeah.
crediting from cash.
Because once you print checks, it pulls it out.
Right.
So it's the same way with the ACH, it's gonna pull that money out.
Okay.
so that process would be the same.
Yeah, the process would be the same, it's just the security would be greatly enhanced.
I think, just to throw this out there, I may have shared this before, but when you go to ACH, I think it opens up another whole risk. I think it's what has to happen in today's world. You have to do ACH, that's what the world runs on. I think it's a must that it must be done, but I just want to throw out that it does open up another opportunity for fraudsters. I know at my business, we had a $66,000 hit because of ACH. That probably wouldn't have happened with the mail. I'm still for ACH, don't get me wrong, but we had a vendor send us a bill. The fraudsters had gone in, they had been monitoring the email between my office and the vendor. They sent an email from a person pretending to be somebody that worked in this vendor's office. And had the statement, had everything about it, okay? And
It's incredible.
it was owned by an old Amish company, and the gal that, or whoever pretended to be Teresa Greville said, you know, we finally talked Elam into accepting ACH payments, so we're gonna, you know, finally getting there. We've been working on this for years, we're finally getting there. And we made the mistake of not picking up the phone and checking that story out, okay? And my office was delighted that, hey, wow, this is easy. Sent $66,000, and we get a statement from the real Teresa Graybill 2 days later. And so my office sends an email and said, could you update the statement because we sent you $66,000 last week? And Teresa Graybill says, we've never taken ACH. You know that. My office did not call and verify that, and 66 grand went into the sky.
And you didn't have a vendor that was doing the ACH that would take the liability.
Yeah.
Never have done it. And they knew that because in the email, they had talked about the owner, that they had finally talked him into accepting it. And my office took it hook, line, and sinker. And it was a real disaster. And it could have been avoided with a simple phone call to verify that. And we didn't do that. We do it now, but we didn't do that. And so when we go to the ACH process, we open up another opportunity for fraudsters. But as long as we're cautious, I think it's the way the world goes.
That's why I would like to use an intermediary that's gonna mitigate that. Because they're using a secure process all the way from the beginning of the onboarding of the vendor to the very final moment when the payment is sent. They're verifying those numbers.
And there's assurances they will take the hit if we.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah.
make sure that there's
That's
something,
my-
and it's a contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big thing. I think, you know, as you said, yeah, I don't think we need approval for this piece of the process,
just
but
wanna move
information
forward.
and once.
Yeah,
we
no, this
get
is
to
good
final-
information to have for the finance committee, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll, before we, you know, pull the trigger, I think we'll probably want to see exactly what it looks like. We'll probably,
Yeah.
might be legal looking at it. It's such a big piece that I'd want to be ironclad if something like that was to happen,
Yep.
that we're not out, not just 66,000, but $1 million or
I love
something
you guys
like
to
that.
see the presentation. It's not very long, but it's really interesting.
Hmm.
Because they have the historicals of cases that they've worked on.
It should save more money, postage going up 5 cents in July.
Oh, yeah, no, and the time, like, that it takes to stuff in it, I know it doesn't, but if you think of all the hundreds of payments that are going out.
Oh, I know.
Weekly.
That's a small step.
Yeah, I know, right?
And,
you know,
we might want to
it's
just check another vendor too. I don't know, just to kind of see.
Yeah,
if
I
we-
can't. I mean, I've been working on this for a little while. I just like these guys because they're just so intense. I mean, the steps that they go through over and over. I mean, everything goes through like DocuSign from the onboarding process, and they verify phone numbers. So it's, but I would like you guys to see the presentation. I think it's really,
I would just like to poke one more thing. Regardless of who you hire for security to do this, a random check from this office to the vendor's office, I think, is in order. Regardless of who you've hired for an insurance company to.
What do you mean a random check?
yeah, I don't
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
All right, so if you're gonna hire this company to make sure to walk us through the money leaving us and to the vendor, okay? It's like payroll. You think that you outsource payroll because they're responsible for all the government transfers. And then when the government comes back, they come back at you. And then you go to payroll and you try to figure out the problem, okay? Same is gonna be true with whatever vendor you have. It's still gonna be our problem, okay? And so a random check from time to time, regardless of who you hire, once a month, take one vendor and just call and check accounts yourself.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I
So,
think
yeah.
is prudent, because yes, you're hiring the company to do it, but it doesn't take more than 10 minutes once a
Yeah.
month to pick one vendor and just check that out. And
Some
and-
sampling.
Yeah, and you could say,
Some
hey, I
quality
want to make
control.
sure this is going okay. Are you getting your
Yeah.
money? And because.
That's a
I
good
get
thing
you.
too,
We're-
to build that
We
relationship.
were talking about checks, when you said random checks, I was like, are we just gonna send a random check?
Yeah, I know, I was so
I'm sorry.
confused.
I was like, we could
Well,
do
it's
that.
Friday, Steve, don't confuse
Excuse me.
me.
See if they try and double cash it, and then,
No, random
yeah,
verification.
verification,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like we did
trust
that with
but
the bond
verify.
payment. He and I both worked on that, so I could show him how to do it. And we went through and made sure that the routing number matched their original wiring instructions, just to be sure. But to do that on the scale of the warrant, it would take us 2 days
Oh,
to
I
do
agree.
that
I'm just
by
saying,
ourselves.
once in a
Yeah,
while,
no,
a
I agree.
verification.
Also, either when they're sending their verification information, or if you're sending verification information, you should always be using the secure, because that locks it when
Yeah.
you're sending it. So we should never be sending any bank account information, because they'll pick it out and they'll change the number.
Yeah.
And before you even know it, it's just crazy how they're
No, I
doing that
frequently
stuff,
have to
so.
get bank letters for the state for various things,
Yeah.
and I get them sent to me secured from the bank.
Yeah.
Or get them sent by the bank.
I have a lot of experience with unemployment fraud.
Oh, yeah, that's what we do.
Massachusetts is the most generous unemployment system in the country. It's about $1,000 a week at the top levels, which also makes us a massive target for fraud. So it's pretty much just a daily battle. The dark web has everybody's social security numbers, all of their information, including everybody at this table. So if they literally go to the extent of recruiting people off the street to file unemployment, and with all their information, and we've had to do 3 different ID check processes, and they'll make fake websites. So you go in and you're like, oh, I'm on the Massachusetts unemployment, and they hop up all the time, fake Massachusetts unemployment website. They can make a fake Ellsworth, you
Yeah,
think you're
it's
in there, and to
incredible.
your point on, yep, that little area, you missed that one step, and even a vendor, we could be solicited by a vendor, oh, this is great, this is amazing, I've had 10 different conversations with them. You do all your things, like, oh my God, this whole process was,
It's scary with AI. I mean, they
Imagine what
do
they,
fake voices and phone numbers and they have
Just
bots
crazy.
calling you.
imagine what a fraudster could do if they worked.
I always say that. I'm like, "Does they work this hard? at
Probably
a
doesn't pay
job
as
just
well."
in case? That's true. All right, do you have anything else here?
No, just still waiting for audit and the paychecks. Those are the big things that we're doing
Okay.
right now. And then we're just working on budget.
Nate, you have anything?
Nope.
New Nate?
Just working with Ann.
Okay.
Learning every day.
Anybody from the public? No?
I would ask, is there any public documentation of the budget? Is there, I used to come in and get the budget book for the weekend and go through it and have questions. Have we got
Could probably put some.
anything for the public to view on the proposed budget? This is the 3rd request.
Okay.
yeah,
You've got a big black book right there.
Yeah, this is last year's budget book. Actually, I'm just using it as a reference. So the budget book's still in development. Of course, we're going through the next couple months of budgeting meetings. Yeah, I could definitely consider creating a public budget book document of kind of where we're at now. But again, these are all in kind of draft in development forms, so I'm not quite sure this is not a final document.
Could I just mention something about that, in fairness? We, the counselors, have got the same complaint, okay, that
I imagine you have.
nothing is ready like it should be ready. And I think we've said this before, or I've said this before, and I think it's a fair statement, that there's a lot of transitions going on and a lot of problems, and I would, I've said this.
Software switches.
Right, I've said this before in other areas, that '24 is a disaster year for the city and other people as well. And I would put that focus, I know I am putting that focus on next year's process, okay? I'm not denying or saying that your concerns aren't real, because when we got our budget books this year, they were empty. And they were drafts and guesses and tries, and when the departments come forward, they're giving us their final right then, and your experience
The
did not.
night of the meeting.
Right, and I would ask that we look at this process with relatively new people. It's not correct. I don't think it's up to par, but all we can do is look forward, not chew on yesterday.
And you need to understand something, Counselor. I'm sitting here and making my concerns. I'm not at a public meeting. This is public, but I'm not at,
Right.
the TV cameras going,
Right.
throwing out there.
Right, but I feel your pain.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel your pain.
I'm not gonna do something that's gonna damage this city, but I have concerns.
It's not
And-
right.
Yeah, and it's good that you're admitting that.
Oh, it's not right. It's, the 3 years, this is my third.
And I'd love to sit with you. I sat at that table for 25 years.
Yeah, I think, I'd love to have a budget book that sits out there
And-
in the front and come in.
And I've been
It's-
told I'm on the agenda Monday night.
You are?
Solid Waste Committee.
Oh, yes, that's right, that's
So-
right.
Nobody's told me that.
But,
I've been invited.
Oh,
Could we just
that's
learn,
me.
could we just learn from Mr. Fortier's comment and his experience?
Yep.
I negotiated the solar project,
Okay.
so I gave you a heartache.
It's,
That's
but
gotta
it's
be a
great
pain.
money, it's a great offset, it really saves the city a lot.
And
Could I just finish
saying
one?
that, the other night I watched the budget meeting for highway. The garage has always been on that list of, and Adam sat here and said it wasn't on the solar project list. Well, I've got all the paperwork at home and it is.
I thought it was too. I didn't know if it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
on
What
the
happens
other
when
one.
I'm in charge, I say things that aren't right.
Hmm?
That's what happens when I'm in charge, I say things that
Yeah,
aren't right.
You're
But
just a
in all
player.
seriousness, hopefully, next year, we can have a public budget book out there for people, and hopefully your house is in order by then, so that
That's my wish.
we could have what you're requesting. I'd like to have it myself,
I think
because
it's-
it's a helter-skelter process.
Even more than next year, and to your point on, we gotta kind of where we're at and getting the budget books, we're delivering the public meetings, I think, that piece, but it's also not just next year, that's like, month to month, I know I've looked at other municipal governments on sort of their online data visualizations, on budgeted to actuals, and creating those systems so the public can, in real time, see where we're at, and the
Yep.
counselors in real time. And
I
do feel-
don't know how the council that I was part of could have overseen the city of Ellsworth properly without the financial information we got every month.
Yeah,
You got the budgeted amount, the corrected amount, the month-to-date, year-to-date percentage, last year and the year before. You had it all in a report.
Yep.
That's how you could manage
yeah. And sort of even
this
citi-
organization.
So a citizen like yourself, in addition to the council, can come in and, in October and say, hey, where are we at? Okay, that's what your budget is, your actuals, these are the departmentals, where you're going down. I mean, in an ideal world, this is
Well,
public
you look
information.
at, you look at trends. X department is 62% of salary, and it's only the fourth month.
Yeah.
What's going on? So you ask that question up front. You don't wait until June to ask that question. Why are you overdrawn? So it's just, your information is so critical.
I know, It
And
has to be
and
right.
I applaud you for working your ass off to get the information. I just look forward to the time you succeed.
me too. Me too, I think we're close. I do, if we can just get through this software integration and this payroll thing, I think we're home
Budget
free.
season and a migration of software, boy, did you double up good.
It was already planned for me.
That's it.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
I think Charlie has-
You're cut off.
My daughter.
Do I need to sign that, or is
My
it?
daughter
Yeah,
went to the
I'll
house
just
on
sign it.
Washington State the other day.
She did.